Thank you, Karin. Good morning, everyone, you brave souls out in this cold, cold day. My name is Amy Collins. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a commissioned lay minister and one of today's service leaders here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland. I bid you welcome, whether you're here in person or joining us virtually live or at a later date. Each week you hear us acknowledge that we're gathering on the original lands of the Erie, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabeg people, known as the Three Fires Council. We do this to show respect for the diverse people and cultures who preceded us, as well as those who gather here now. You may be aware that we have the Lake Erie Native American Council, LENAC, in a regular rotation as an offertory recipient as a more tangible way to show our commitment to honoring that complex history. We are a pluralist and covenantal community. We're humanist, pagan, Buddhist, Jewish, Christian, atheist, agnostic, and some of us resist or reject all of those labels. We define family in many and diverse ways, by birth and by choice, and many of us claim this community as an extended family of sorts. We represent a continuum of gender and sexuality. We are neurodiverse and neurotypical. We have visible and invisible financial, racial, and cultural differences and health and ability realities. As a covenantal community, we coexist with this range of beliefs and identities because we agree to respect and care for one another and make room for one another. We are also imperfect in our sincere and committed efforts to make room for all of these differences. Our covenant is something that we often read aloud as our chalice lighting as an expression and reminder of our aspirations and intentions. If you're just discovering us and want to learn more or hear from us, fill out one of the guest cards. These are usually in the pew rack around you or nearby, and put it on the offering plate later in the service. If you're with us online, you can visit our website at uucleveland.org. Following the service, we have coffee and other beverages downstairs in our fellowship hall. And if you'd like to learn more about us, folks in our community who elect to grab a blue coffee cup, hint, hint to the rest of you, are signaling the fact that they would welcome interruptions and are comfortable answering any questions you may have about our community. They might not know all of the answers, but they'll help you figure out how to get answers. Please take a moment now to silence any of your electronic devices and put them in worship mode. Welcome to our precious, aspirational, flawed, and beloved community. And we're going to light the chalice. We have the Youngless clan, part of the Youngless clan, coming up here to help light the chalice today. And I would invite you to join me with the covenant that's on the yellow card in the pew rack as we do that. Mason and Jay are going to be our chalice lighters today. We cultivate trust with one another by celebrating differences, honoring boundaries, and offering compassion and care. We listen to each other deeply with curiosity and wonder. We speak for ourselves without need to defend ourselves or persuade each other. We create safe and brave space for healthy conflict, creativity, and fun. We reconcile through forgiving and making amends when we hurt one another.
Good morning. My name is Mark Weber. Good morning. Our theme for this month is resistance. Before the rise of President Trump, if someone mentioned the word resistance, one might think of either the armed French resistance during World War II or the nonviolent resistance of the 60s and beyond that we call the Civil Rights Movement. This morning, let us return, if we can, to the earlier resistance movements that I just mentioned. Two individuals who come to mind are the French writer Albert Camus and the famous civil rights leader Martin Luther King. Camus joined the French resistance in 1940 and eventually edited the resistance journal called Combat. In the post-war period, he was considered the best example of a new philosophical current called existentialism, although Camus consistently, and I might add vehemently, rejected the label. Martin Luther King rose from being an obscure pastor supporting the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott. He rose to be a national apostle of Gandhian nonviolence and justice by April of 1968, when he was assassinated in Memphis, where he had gone to stand in solidarity with striking sanitation workers. It is important for us on this Sunday, the Sunday closest to Martin Luther King's birthday, and not necessarily the shopping day at the malls, but the actual birthday, to remind ourselves that Martin Luther King was one of our most important resistance leaders in American history. And now, since we're all warmed up, let's stand up or remain seated and greet one another.
Please join in singing 118, This Little Light of Mine. Everywhere I go. Building up a world.
Good morning. My name is Jenny Papp, and I am the Director of Lifespan Faith Development for this congregation. This is the second week of a extended 7-week celebration of something here at UUCC we call Chalice. During the gray months of winter, when we all would prefer a little more light, and thankful so much when it does peek its way out, we have this tradition. We light candles each week to recognize the light that our values and our principles can shed on us and on the whole world. So we also encourage you to spend a little time with this spiritual practice in your home as well. You can take candles from over there, and you may find things to contemplate about those values each week on the website or in a little pamphlet that's over there for you. So we have Jay and Mason Youngless up here to light our Chalice candles. And so first we light the one in the middle, which is pink for liberating love. And then we relight the one from last week, which was blue and symbolized pluralism. And this second week of Chalice, they've lit the purple one, which lifts up our shared value of transformation. And transformation calls us to adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform, to collectively grow spiritually and ethically. We have openness to change is something that is fundamental in our Unitarian and Universalist heritage. It's never complete, it's never perfect. And it is reflected in our consistent commitment to accept one another and encourage each other to spiritual growth. That's a lot to think on for this week.
So each week we pause and we take a moment to recognize those joys and concerns that are in our hearts so that we might share them in community and lighten the load and magnify the joy. And we do have our book up here that we invite people to write in what's going on. So for those that I have not gotten to preview, forgive my stumbling. For Minneapolis and other cities who are supporting their immigrant neighbors and protecting their poor treatment nonviolently, we keep them in our hearts and send our good energy to them. And from Peggy, continued healing for her sister Jan, who's going through chemo. And healing thoughts to Pat Solomon, who in the midst of a move with her husband Glenn to Judson Manor is in the hospital with influenza A and a fractured rib. Gratitude that Kristen's niece Hallie's scan shows very good results from her first series of chemo. And also, if we could keep in our hearts Laura Imbernoni, whose husband passed away this week. Keep her in your loving thoughts. If you're joining us online today, we invite you to share in the comments those things that are in your heart. And as always, during the beautiful music that Karin plays, if you would like to put a stone in our Joys and Concerns bowl, please do so. Some are already here, so we're already holding those in the love of our community. place a final stone in the water for all of you who are joining us online and have your joys and concerns, and for all of those that remain in the silent sanctuaries of our heart.
Well, what will this all look like when this is over? We hear this, and I hear this as a very earnest question from people. I do not have, and probably you do not have, an answer for them. That's what they need, but we don't have that. As you heard when we lit the Chalice candle, this week we're exploring and focusing on our shared value of transformation. Thinking about that this week as I prepared for this, I was reminded, as we often are, of that natural transformation and metamorphosis that a caterpillar has to endure to become a butterfly. Has anyone heard of the hungry caterpillar? Have you? Yeah. So when you open the book, The Hungry Caterpillar, what is the caterpillar doing on the first page? He's eating. And so what happens if you turn the page? What's the hungry caterpillar doing on the next page? He's still eating. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Remind me, I have not read this in a while. When you turn the page to the third page, what is the hungry caterpillar doing? He's eating and eating. There were so many. A caterpillar crunches its way through the ecosystem, cutting a swath of destruction, literally sometimes, depending on the caterpillar, eating as much as 100 times or more its weight every single day. And then every once in a while, it gets too fat, and it slits right down the back, and its skin falls off, and it has fresh new skin that fits all that food. It can do that 4 or 5 times in a life, I expect, somewhere around there. Eventually, though, a caterpillar stops eating, and it finds a nice twig or a branch, and it hangs upside down, or maybe right side up, I don't know. It hangs from the branch, and the skin of the caterpillar has its last purpose there. What is it now that it's hanging there? What is that called? A cocoon. Another name I heard, a chrysalis. Yep, that's the outside. And there's a lot going on in there. You would never know it from the outside, but there's a lot going on in there. That caterpillar is changing into a completely different kind of creature. That kind of change is a metamorphosis or a transformation. So most of its life it spends as a caterpillar, and it doesn't need to know how to be any other kind of creature. But during the metamorphosis, it has to change, and it starts doing this by using a special code that is in its cells. Tiny things biologists call imaginal discs. The caterpillar's other cells do not care for them, and the immune system of the caterpillar tries to fight off these imaginal discs, but they just keep coming, and they link arms, and they keep coming, and eventually the caterpillar is just goo literally, goo, soup, caterpillar soup, per se, to feed these imaginal cells. For a long time, biologists could not understand why the immune system of a caterpillar was doing this. And they finally figured it out. They discovered that the caterpillar carried a unique genome that belonged to the butterfly. The caterpillar had no use for it, but this genome belonged to the butterfly. And so the caterpillar was carrying that. This is my biology. You biologists out there, this is my biology. So, if we see ourselves as imaginal discs, think of yourself as an imaginal disc, and you're working very hard, all of the imaginal discs, to build the butterfly of a better world. We'll understand then that we are launching a new genome of values, a new genome of values and practices to replace those that are currently unsustainable in the system that we have. We'll also see how important it is to link together. And then also think about how many imaginal cells it's going to take to build a world with all the capabilities and colors that we can dream of. In caterpillars, it takes imaginal cells. In people, it takes a special kind of powerful imagination. You can call it faith, trust, love, hope. But whatever you call it, there is no denying that somehow there is an amazing plan out there that will let a worm grow wings. That will allow us to imagine that transformation into a world that's an entirely new winged creature that we want. And they love beautiful butterflies, so that's what we'll do, right? Thank you for sharing with me today, and thank you so much for helping me remember the hungry caterpillar story. I would not have remembered all the things they ate, so I appreciate that.
This morning, the proceeds of our offering plate will go to the Northeast Ohio Community Resilience Center, formerly known as the Northeast Ohio Black Health Coalition. It was founded in 2011 as the NEO Black Health Coalition. The NEO Community Resilience Center is the only nonprofit organization in Ohio to address the health disparities among more than 550,000 African Americans who live in the 16 counties of northeastern Ohio. Please place any cash or checks payable to UUCC in the collection plate as it goes around. You can also contribute, as always, electronically, directing Zelle contributions to donate@uucleveland.org and any Cash App contributions to UUCC 44122. Please indicate in the memo line if your contribution is for the NEO Community Resilience Center, your annual pledge, or something else. Thank you for contributing generously within your means. I invite you into a personal moment of reflection. When I ring the peace bell in a moment, consider the dimensions of practicing resistance in your own personal life. What does it look like and mean in your life?
You know, I wasn't so sure this was a good idea this morning, but you'll be the judge of that. This sermon, or reflection, marks the return of Nubs the Barber, a character from sermons I gave many, many years ago. And there are a number of members of our congregation, perhaps even the majority, who have no idea who Nubs is. So, in any case, let me begin. Nubs was a frail and emaciated figure from my youth who chain-smoked camels unfiltered and who cursed like a longshoreman and who was the only barber in the little village, Lancaster, Wisconsin, which was my home for the first 18 years of my life. Lancaster had a population of 3,000 souls and another 500 souls buried in the Christ our Lord and Savior cemetery. Atheists and Jews were likely not accepted. It was the end of the year 1965 in August, very humid, and I was heading back to college the following week. I opened the door of Nubs's barber shop and a fog of cigarette and cigar smoke enveloped me like a blanket. And there was Nubs, cigarette hanging from his mouth, a straight-edge razor clutched in one hand, gesturing like he was giving a campaign speech. The customers smiled nervously, and they kept one eye on the straight-edge razor. "Weber," yelled Nubs, "sit down, damn it, you're next." "So," he crooned after I was sitting in the chair, his voice gravelly from the most recent camels. "Your mom tells me you're taking beginning philosophy." Yes, sir," I said. He responded, "Besides Plato and Aristotle, who else are you studying?" I said, "Well, there's this guy, Albert Camus." "Who's he?" Nubs said, "It's pronounced Camus. And he wrote an essay about making a singular choice about where he stood in the face of violence. A choice that you'll have to make one day, soon." This was during the era of Vietnam and the draft, of course. I said, "Me? Make a decision? Wait, Tell me more. We have to fade out at this point and move to north central France. There is the town of Sains, a population in 1960 of about 20,000 people, known for its Gothic architecture and beautiful mountain views and trails, which attracted visitors from really all over France and Italy. Well, they've got plenty of mountains there, but and Spain. In January of 1960, Camus had journeyed to Sains with friends as they explored the mountain trails. Camus, suffering from what they called weak lungs, due in large part to his chain smoking, was urged by his wife Francine to go to enjoy the mountain air, but to avoid strenuous hikes. When he arrived in Sains, he stopped at the train ticket office to buy a return ticket to Paris. He also purchased a pack of Gaulois, a noxious brand of unfiltered tobacco cigarettes popular among post-war France, among the intelligentsia of post-war France. As Camus sat on the bench with the breathtaking view, puffing on yet another cigarette, he smiled as a familiar figure sat down next to him. Michel Gallimard, his publisher, invited Camus to share a ride back to Paris in his brand new Vegas sports car. Albert, he pleaded, you have to accept my humble invitation to ride in my new car. If you don't, my wife and daughter will never forgive me. Don't worry, we'll put them in the back seat, and then you and I can talk. Camus glanced at the yellow sports car parked across the street. Well, Michel, I purchased a train ticket for Paris, but alas, I do not want to disappoint either you or your family. Since I just got here, let's leave in about 2 hours or whenever you're ready. So about 2 hours later, the four friends took off with Gallimard behind the wheel and with the top down, despite the fact that, well, it was January. Camus was born and raised in French-controlled Algeria in 1913. He was born a Pied Noir, or Blackfoot, the name given to Europeans, mainly French, but also Spanish, Italian, Maltese, and some Jews from Europe, who settled in Algeria during the long period of French colonial rule from 1830 to 1962. At the height of this community's power and influence in Algeria, in 1951, the number of Pied Noirs in Algeria stood at about 1.4 million. That would be about 15% of the population. The rest of the population were Berbers or Arabs who were poor, Sunni Muslim by religion, and who were completely excluded from governance. In 1962, at the conclusion of the bloody war for Algerian independence, about 1 million Pied Noirs fled from Algeria, most but not all settling in France. But about 200,000 Pied Noirs decided to stay in Algeria, where they would become a minority, but not a rich and powerful one. They lacked the power and influence they had before independence. And as of 5 years ago, the number of Pied Noirs in Algeria was down to 200. A faint remnant of a once vibrant community. You'll be happy to know that at least one famous Pinot Noir is on everyone's lips, and that would be the fashion designer Yves Saint Laurent. With the outbreak of World War II, Camus volunteered for service in the French army, but naturally was rejected because of his weak lungs. However, the French resistance was not nearly as picky as the French army, and Camus joined the resistance and soon found his way to writing for the clandestine newspaper Combat. This was a wise move, since there was general agreement among all of the field commanders of the resistance fighters that the prospect of the ailing Camus trying to manage a loaded Tommy gun was a threat to all soldiers, whether friend or foe. In 1935, Camus joined the Communist Party of France. He gave two reasons for this decision. One, he felt the party was effectively trying to fight fascism in Europe. And two, he felt the party was trying to support indigenous Arabs and Berbers who were subjected to exploitation at the hands of the French army, the French Foreign Legion, and of course the Pinot Noir minority. It was not long, however, that Camus, in his writings, fell afoul of Joseph Stalin, and he was summarily expelled from the party. This expulsion marked a painful break between the neutral Camus and writers like Jean-Paul Sartre, still committed to support the Soviet Union in these early days of the Cold War. It also launched Camus on an intellectual and spiritual journey that would take him from Karl Marx to a humanist theory of resistance based on making a defining choice, like the ones that sometimes we have to make at various crossroads in our lives. Following the end of the war, World War II, Camus felt that against the backdrop of the Holocaust, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and a few years later, the bloody Algerian War for Independence, various ideologies of both the political left and the political right have fashioned a sort of all-encompassing kind of reductionist view that reduces human beings to broad categories: social class, religion, ethnicity, race, nationality, politics, and a few more. Camus believed that as we target people on the basis of these broad categories, the would-be executioner, under the heady influence of ideology, looks through the sight of his rifle. However, the human form blurs and grows indistinct as the executioner cocks his rifle and fires. Presto, the would-be executioner is now a real executioner, and the would-be victim is a real dead victim. In his seminal essay, Neither Victims Nor Executioners, written in Combat in 1946, Camus concluded with the following observation. He wrote, "Really, all I ask is that in the midst of a murderous world, we agree to reflect on murder and then to make a choice. After that, we can distinguish those who accept the consequences of being murderers or the accomplices of murderers, and those who refuse to do so with all their force and being. Since this terrible dividing line actually does exist," he wrote, "it would be a gain if it were clearly marked." End of quote. Well, those who oppose murder with all their force and being are those who have chosen to be neither victims nor executioners. And this personal rebellion means stepping outside the modern paradigm of violence. It means facing firmly the forces of reaction. It means working to build a world where there are no victims nor executioners. This damn stretch of highway along Highway 5 toward Paris was deceptively slippery and icy. This was the humble opinion of Captain Sébastien Prudhomme of the National Gendarme. Around the next bend, Captain Prudhomme saw it. A new-looking yellow Vega sports car was practically shorn in two, hitting the tree at a high speed. Captain Prudhomme's initial investigation found that the driver of the car, Michel Gallimard, was injured critically and was dying. The two passengers in the back seat had been thrown clear of the impact. Gallimard's wife, Janine, and daughter, 18-year-old daughter, Anne, escaped unscathed. The fourth passenger, Albert Camus, was killed instantly. In the pocket of Camus' overcoat, Captain Prudhomme found one valid and unused train ticket from Seine to Paris. Indeed, the choices we make. At the time of this fatal accident, Camus was 46 years old. Several years earlier, at the age of 44, he was the youngest person ever up to that point to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. And throughout his short life, Camus envisioned a world with lines clearly drawn between those who refuse to be either victims or executioners and those who do not. He wrote, "Genuine resistance begins when we firmly stand against the murder for hire paradigm of today's world." However, an appropriate question to ask, or for you to ask me, is to say, okay, Mark, in the end, so what? What does Camus and his intellectual travails, what do those mean to me and to us? Well, first, when we make the choice of being neither a victim nor an executioner, we reject the process of othering human beings by obscuring their identity as individuals and rendering them vulnerable to persecution, and even in some cases mass murder. But on a less momentous scale, we harm our friends, our loved ones, our fellow congregants, when we sometimes other them by blurring them with the lens of generalization and stereotyping, rather than seeing them who they really are in the unfiltered light of day. Thanks.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join in our closing hymn 121, "We'll Build a Land." Go
Before we all leave to go out on our way, some announcements for all of you. The first announcement is about announcements. During our the time that Randy Partain is away on sabbatical, they have suggested in their brochure, which if you don't have one, they are over there. Any question that you might have asked Randy may be answered in here, or they have told you where to go to find the answer. Announcements are being sent to an email address, which is worship@uucleveland.org. It's a different person doing announcements every week, and we don't know who's doing them next week. So if you send them to that whole team ahead of time, it helps those who are not religious professionals for a living collect those things in advance and have them prepared. Thank you. That was the most important one. The rest of them, no. Our capital campaign consultant, Glenn, has left us here in all of your capable hands, and this is an announcement on the capital campaign. To date, 31% of the congregation, nearly 1/3 of UUCers, have made pledges totaling $3,808,432,000. That means that the Building Our Tomorrows campaign is at 63% of its $6 million goal, only 6 weeks from its official kickoff. Glenn says, that's amazing. You have achieved something amazing, well over halfway to a new UUCC, one with a flexible, open sanctuary, improved infrastructure, and a welcoming community and people-oriented spaces. Are you among the 31%? Thank you. Thank you. If you are not, we encourage you to make that number larger, to become part of something bigger. Together, we're not just reaching a goal. That's really answering a call. Will you join us? To the mission that will serve, did you know, one of the pieces of the mission that will serve, did you know this congregation is a founding member of Greater Cleveland Congregations? And did you know GCC is celebrating its 15th birthday next Sunday, January 25th at 3 o'clock at Olivet Institutional Baptist Church? And did you know the 3 original tri-chairs will be there having a conversation and sharing some of the organizing secrets? This will be an especially great opportunity to learn about GCC if you are newer to our congregation. Please join others from UUCC at this thrilling event. Yes, if you were wondering and this tips it over, there will be cake. More information is downstairs. See Bob Stabe or Lori Albright for more information, carpooling, registering. UUs across the country gathered this past June at General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association, and they overwhelmingly approved several, I believe 3, actions of immediate witness, including one calling us to resist authoritarianism. Okay, clapping's good. Here's what you can do. In response, our Democracy in Action team, with the recommendation of the UU Social Justice Group, is inviting our congregation to take a concrete step by approving a resolution that is aligned with that action. This resolution has been reviewed and approved by your Board of Trustees and is now coming to the congregation for a vote. We know that congregational votes outside of the annual meeting are unusual, but this follows our UUCC Justice Endorsement Policy, which we adopted in 2021, and we are now implementing that for the first time. Information about this resolution was shared at the Congregational Conversation on October 12th, and more details will be included in the weekly update on Thursdays. We encourage you to review the materials and plan to be present to vote on February 8th, immediately following the worship service. Thank you for showing up, staying engaged, and giving our voice to Unitarian Universalist values when you do that. Today, what you may do, there is a considering membership session or what is sometimes known as the new member class, at 11:45 in the conference room, which is, I believe, room 215. Grab a cup of what you would like, talk to someone with a blue cup for a minute, and then come on up here at 11:45. Let's see. Last one. The Leadership Development Council's learning session on the topic of meetings with meaning will be in room 207 at 11:30 today. That is the end of announcements in a very busy congregation that clearly needs different space.
Friends, it is time for us to part and to go our own ways. We don't have answers to all the vexing questions that confront us. And sometimes, it seems, at least speaking personally for me, I have almost no answers to the many challenges that are facing us as Unitarian Universalists, as citizens. However, if we, through nonviolent resistance, choose to stand in solidarity with the despised, the marginalized, and the persecuted, then we can begin to walk a path toward the kind of beloved community that both Albert Camus and most especially Martin Luther King talked about. Go in peace.
Please join me in our Chalice extinguishing words found on one of the sides of your yellow card. Jenny will extinguish for us, and she's handy. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.